I pretty much know everyone here in the room, but if I don't know you, my name is Jason. I'm the Executive Director of the Historical Society, and I just want to give you a warm welcome before handing the microphone to our chair. Jim Shriver who's going to say a few words.
Oh, thank you, Jason. Good afternoon, and welcome to the annual meeting of the Historical Society of Carroll County. It's really, truly wonderful to see such a great turnout. It's really an indication of the interest and support for our society. Before we start, I would like to take a portion of our meeting to recognize our dedicated staff and thank them for the hard work throughout the year. Jason and Larry, Laura Bankert, Stephanie Eckert, Sharon Borsch-Herding, and Beverly Staub. And a special thanks to our Board of Trustees and all the volunteers who offer their time and their talents to our organization. They're really a force multiplier for our organization. And I also like to recognize a guest of Commissioner Tom Gordon is here today. Tom, stand up. And Commissioner Susan Krebs is here today. Susan, we thank you for your service to our county. And now I'd like to get on to the business part of our meeting. And it will be my pleasure to introduce our treasurer, Tyler Codd, to give you a financial update for the organization. Tyler?
A little bit of a long walk. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming out. For those of you that have been to this event before, I typically just say, look at what's on your table. It's very hard to see on slides, so you have the information in front of you. But to give a little bit of an overview for anyone that doesn't know how our finance committee works, we meet quarterly, go over budgets, actual results, manage the cash flow for the organization. Have a great team behind me, along with Jason and our bookkeeping staff member, that make everything kind of go really smoothly for us as an organization. We're in the process of switching over from a fiscal year calendar to a calendar year operating budget. And for those of you that don't know what that means, we've always operated July 1st to June 30th to manage finances, but we've decided to switch it up and operate more on a calendar year to help align everything going on in the operation. So we are operating under this year and a condensed 6-month fiscal year that you'll see in front of you, and we will be switching going forward to a calendar year. The annual fund appeal will be mailed out soon. Keep that in mind. I know there's a lot of organizations that we all like to contribute to, and we appreciate any resources that you're willing to throw our way for all the things that we're trying to accomplish here as an organization. We have significant challenges as a historical entity that our buildings, things that need to be updated, things that we're working on definitely are costly. So anything that you can possibly help with is more than appreciated. And as mentioned, we just appreciate all of your commitments to the Historical Society. I can tell you personal experience being a part of the organization, probably from 2018 or 2019 to now, we've seen significant changes in a positive direction, starting with Jason as our fearless leader and everything that you guys have been able to do as a membership. So we appreciate it. Any questions for me? I always say if you have any questions off-site or anything like that, feel free to reach out, and I'd love to dive into some numbers or anything like that if you'd like to. Thanks again.
Thank you, Tyler. Next, I'd like to introduce Charles Fisher, who is chair of our governance committee and also our nominations for board terms. Charlie? It's another long walk.
Oh, I made it. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. This year, which one of these works?
This one.
This one?
Yep.
Thank you.
This year, we say goodbye for his years of service to the board to Dale Bauman, who has been on the board for several years. And the following board members are nominated to serve an additional term on the board of directors. For one-year terms, Tyler J. Codd, Douglas P. Velnosky, Bernard L. Jones Sr. And could you all stand up when I mention your names? Thank you. For additional 3-year terms, myself, Charles O. Fisher Jr., and Debbie Leeser. Debbie, are you here? There she is, raising her hand back there. And nominated to join the board for her first term is Jennifer Riley McDonald. Jennifer, you are here. Jennifer Riley McDonald has been actively involved with the Historical Society of Carroll County for the past 5 years, both as a volunteer and through her role as Social Studies Student Achievement Coordinator for Carroll County Public Schools. Her passion for history runs deep, rooted in childhood family road trips planned by her father, an American history enthusiast, who made sure every vacation included a visit to a historical site somewhere in the country. Jennifer attended Tulane University in New Orleans, Louisiana, as have 2 of my grandchildren, by the way, where her love of history grew even stronger, inspired by the city's rich cultural and historical landscape. She earned her bachelor's degree in history with a minor in political science. What was meant to be a gap year before law school turned into a lifelong calling when she discovered her love for teaching and helping others connect with the past. After marrying Dan, a now retired U.S. Marine Corps pilot, Jennifer lived in Virginia, Connecticut, and Florida, where she continued to teach, volunteer, and immerse herself in the stories that shape local communities. She went on to earn her master's in education from the University of Mary Washington. Today, Jennifer channels that lifelong passion for history into her work with the Historical Society. She serves on the Outreach Committee's Education Subcommittee and the Gala Committee, and often volunteers alongside her entire family to support the Society's mission. Jennifer is honored to join the Board of Trustees and looks forward to continuing to help preserve Carroll County's rich history and the community. All of the nominees that I've mentioned are submitted for approval to the membership today, and I ask for a vote on this list of nominees for the Board of Trustees. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. That sounds unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Well, I think it's time on the agenda where we acknowledge some pretty extraordinary people. And it is my great honor to soon introduce to the microphone Commissioner Tom Gordon, Thomas S. Gordon III, to be exact. And Tom is being awarded the Distinguished Historian Award for 2025. This award is presented to an individual or recognized group that has made outstanding contributions to advancing the appreciation, understanding, interpretation of Carroll County history by teaching, writing, publications, art, drama, or preserving and restoring historical artifacts and architecture. Tom and his family have been special stewards of our county and nation's historic material culture, for decades. He has personally been involved with the loaning of significant artifacts and archival materials, supporting scholarly publications at the Historical Society, and serving on many committees. The Historical Society is honored to have worked with Tom for many years and is currently working with him on the loaning of significant collections for our upcoming Carroll 250 exhibit in 2026. And now it's my great honor to invite Thomas S. Gordon to the podium, the third. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Wow, what an incredible honor, I have to say, standing here today surrounded by so many who care so deeply about Carroll County's history. It's a little overwhelming in probably the best way possible. When I first heard I was receiving this award, my first thought was, there are so many who do so much for history in this county. How on earth did they pick me? But truly, that's what makes this such a special community. Everywhere you look, there are people quietly preserving, teaching, and sharing our stories. For me, history's always been very personal. As a fifth-generation collector in my family, I used to dig out the family photo albums at my grandparents' farm, faces of family members that caught my curiosity, and they were not identified at the time. Was truly blessed to have my grandfather, Tom Gordon Sr., identify them and now have those photographs with their names written in his hand. Also spent countless decades with my dad and my grandfather all over the country looking at both historic items, museums, and just spending quality time. And history was real. It wasn't just a date in a book, it was real life, and it was all around us. For our county, it's the faces in old photos, the weathered barns still standing tall, the local traditions that keep us grounded in who we are. It's the reminder that we're part of something bigger, and that the choices we make today will one day be history someone else studies. The Historical Society of Carroll County does an incredible job for keeping those connections alive. They help us remember the history isn't just about the past, it's about our sense of place and our shared values and our pride in this county. I've always believed that understanding where you've been gives us the wisdom to guide where we're going. This award truly belongs to everyone who loves this community enough to keep its story alive. The countless individuals who care for our artifacts, our landmarks, archives, give tours, and keep our history vibrant and accessible. I'm proud to be a part of that effort, and I promise you that I will keep championing our history for future generations because Carroll County's story is worth telling again and again. Thank you so much.
Give the award tribute. It's now my pleasure to award the Distinguished Service Award to memory of George and Ann Horvath. This award is given to an individual or couple that has exemplified extraordinary service to the Historical Society over an extended period of time. This service may encompass a proven track record of volunteerism at the Society, sustainable and impactful partnership cultivation, leadership, or extraordinary philanthropic commitment to the Society. George and Ann's volunteerism, commitment to local history, philanthropic support, and deep caring for the Historical Society's mission has propelled the Society forward for decades and continues to work this today. And her extensive knowledge of the Tracy collections, the Society's research holdings, and her time commitment working in the Society Library, and her bringing the Historical Society and the Genealogical Society together to partner on various projects, and is a constant source of knowledge for the many patrons that utilize our Historical Society Library. Ann, please come forward.
I see everybody's got notes up here. Now I don't feel quite so awkward. This is not an award I anticipated ever. I just want to reflect back for a moment. I remember my first encounter with the Historical Society. I was probably 10 to 12 years old, and it was on a school trip. I lived near Gamber, so I was coming from Mechanicsville, which was an elementary school at that time. We came up to the museum. I can remember climbing the steps and seeing that doll collection. I bet there are other ladies here that also remember the doll collection. I just couldn't stop looking at it. There were so many dolls and carriages and cribs and things in that collection. We also went to the basement, and on a shelf there were lots of things we could touch, and there were utensils that I was very familiar with, and I couldn't understand why they were at a museum. I didn't realize that just because my mother was still using them, they weren't antiques. But I couldn't wait to get home that day to tell my mother about the dolls, but also about the antiques she was using every day. So I suppose it's just one of the many experiences that enrich our lives and help us to remember the past and celebrate our ancestors and the people that came before us. This acknowledgement is for both George and myself, and I'm sure he would be thrilled. As a retired state highway employee, he had experience with surveys and land records. That experience stood him well when he volunteered at the Historical Society, and he found the Tracy collection and added that to his bag of tricks, so to speak. He helped many researchers resolve complex questions about their families, their land, or their families' lands. It was so appreciated. I must have millions or thousands of thank you notes that people wrote expressing their appreciation for the work that he did. He became known as sort of the map maker. Dr. Tracy's collection, as many of you know, is very large and complex. I hope that when the library reopens, each of you will find some time to learn a little bit more about the contents. Dr. Tracy was a fantastic individual, and his research and the collections that this Historical Society have are just beyond description. There are wonderful volunteers that work there, and I'm sure they'd be very glad to let each of you know a little bit more about them and give you a tour. George had hoped that one day Dr. Tracy would receive some acknowledgement for what he had done for the Historical Society, and getting this award, I'm sure he would see as a good step in that direction. I have to acknowledge some of the mischief makers in my life, the Carroll County Genealogical Society. I see Carol Wheatley, who I think was a big instigator in getting my name on this list. She's standing back here. And the Carroll County Genealogical Society research team is at the table, and they were very involved with getting this reward for me, and I thank them very much. I'd like to also introduce my family. George's two daughters are here. Sandra Horvath is sitting at the table where I was sitting, and Deborah Dowdle with her husband Todd is also there. Sandy came down from Bel Air, took a day off from her nursing career, and Debbie and Todd drove up from North Carolina to be at the event today. I really appreciate their support, and George would have been very pleased. Take my paper. I want to express my sincere appreciation for this honor and to all the people involved. Again, this is not something I would have dreamed that I would be ever doing. Thank you very much.
Now I'd like to award the Historic Preservation Award to Tim Kyle. This award shall be presented to an individual or recognized group that has made an outstanding contribution to historic preservation in Carroll County. Examples include saving and renovating historically significant buildings or structures, safeguarding or advocating for historical landscapes or view sheds, documenting or promoting historic preservation through writing or research, or raising public awareness of threatened historic properties or buildings. We are honored to recognize Tim Kyle for his tremendous work over the past years to save from peril one of our county's most iconic landmarks, Roof's Mill. Just outside Westminster, he has led the charge in not only researching the property, but shouldering the responsibility of overseeing the stabilization of the site and its numerous buildings, including its historic Oliver Evans grist mill. I have toured Roof's Mill many times, and I know the challenge, and Tim is up for that challenge. And please, Tom, come forward. Thank you, Tim.
Well, I'm just like pretty much everybody else who does things like this. I never thought this award was going to be in my future when I drove past that mill for 40-some years and just slowly saw it fall down. I don't know, something happened inside me that just made me want to go there and restore it. I remember when I got talking to the last owner, and we came back from a function, and he was asking me about maybe I should be the one to buy this. And my wife Vicki looked at me and says, "You're not going to buy that, are you?" I said, "No, I won't." But a year later, I went ahead and took care of being able to purchase it. And, you know, I just always had this desire in me to restore things that have fell down, have gone to disrepair, to the people who have built them, to try to make them feel worthy again from what they did from years ago. We all know that the history is where our roots can come from. It helps us connect to the past, to the people in the past, and these same people built this community years ago. I just want to tell everybody that when you get started with a project like this, you can't do it all at one time. You got to take it a little bit at a time, inch by inch. Anything's a cinch, and that's the way I'm going to go about it. Jim, I'm hoping I can live up to everybody's expectations, but I'm just so glad, and I thank God that I have the resources and the ability to take care of this place, and I'm going to do my best what I can. If nothing else, wherever I leave it, it'll be better than where it was when I started. Thank you.
Okay, get ready for the entertainment now. It is my honor and my pleasure to announce the Volunteer of the Year for 2025. Sharon Sherry Regal has lived in Carroll County since 1973. She's been a math teacher in Oklahoma, Texas, New York, and Maryland from 1968 to 1982. She also taught preschool in Carroll County in the late 80s. She was a sales clerk, and some of you may remember this place, the Little Professor Bookstore in Eldersburg. She worked in import at London Fog in Eldersburg from 1989 to 2002, when it closed. She was manager, also you might know this, at the News Center Hallmark store in Eldersburg from 2003 to the end of 2016, when she retired. She has volunteered with the Carroll County Lioness chapter, creating blankets for over 20 years. In 2023, she began quilting at the Carroll County Farm Museum. She is also a quilting demonstrator for them now. She became a regular volunteer at HSCC in September of 2023, and ironically, that is 1 month after I started. She lives in Eldersburg and has 3 sons. She is thankful that she has reached the time in her life to give back to her community. I want to welcome and congratulate Sherry on Volunteer of the Year. There you go. Here you go, ma'am.
You want to say a few words here?
Oh, no. I'll keep it short. Thank you. It's my pleasure to do for the Historical Society what needed to be done. I saw a need, I saw someone that wanted me to, and my boys were glad I was off the street. But I take pride in what I do, and when I finish a job, I'm glad to see that it's appreciated, and it has been by so many of you that have told me. And this is just more than I expected, as many people have already said, because I was just doing what I love to do. I keep busy with what I'm doing. I've met so many people, made so many friends, and I hope I can do it for a few more years. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you for all your service.
I guess I have to take this on.
Give Laura a second to get the slide. Oh, yeah.
We gotta find
She
it.
told me I was supposed to be entertaining. Thank you.
Thank you.
Get this out of your way. You don't need it.
You ready? In 1939, the Society stepped forward to save the historic Shellman House. Over the years, it added the Kimmy Building and Cocky's Tavern to our Main Street campus. In our efforts to preserve the heritage of Carroll County, I am pleased to announce the public phase of our aggressive $650,000 capital campaign, Building Community Inspired by History. This is a renewed commitment to our Main Street campus. It involves 4 main projects: opening the second floor of Shellman to new interpretation of those who live there, and to offer a great start with the Mary Shellman Room. Improved accessibility. We have walkways, and now we're working on the ramp to the back of Cocky's Tavern. We have the library moved to Cocky's. This will be a functional library with the look and feel of an old-time study, incorporating items from our collection, and have a room for manuscripts and also a room for photographs. We're also going to have the return of the auditorium with the addition of exhibit space. Already through the efforts of our campaign committee, Doug Valinowski, Debbie Leisure, Sam Greenholtz, and our special advisor, Lee Prim, we have raised, through generous support, over $400,000. We are well on the way to building a foundation for the society and carrying that legacy on for future generations. And I'm so pleased that we might say we're bringing everything out of storage and putting it on display and making it accessible to people. So we're not just a museum, we're an organization that promotes history. And all of our component parts will be utilized in that Main Street campus.
Thank you very much, Jim. How are we doing? Doing good so far? Okay. So we're going to dive in a little deeper into the plans of the campaign. And first off, we want to tell you that we have a surprise for a few surprises for you. But the first is, along with the announcement of the campaign, we are just today launching the Historical Society's digital library. And I'm going to ask some very special guests to come to the podium to help us look at that digital library together. The first is Josh Irvin from Gage Digital Media. Josh, have a warm round of applause for you. We've been working on this project with our collaborators, Mimi and Helena, for how many months now?
It's 8 months now.
8 months in the making. And we are going to pull it up on the screen here in just a matter of seconds. Hang on, sorry. Josh, while Laura's getting that pulled up, why don't you introduce yourself and just tell everybody a little bit more who you are.
Sounds good. Hi, yeah, so I am Josh Irvin. I am a client success coordinator at Gage Digital Media. I'm also been the project manager for the digital library on the fulfillment side, getting everything built out, the custom development and design. I also have a background in history. I was doing Native American and early American history. Got my master's from George Washington University. So when this came across that we were doing this project, I was immediately like, you guys got to give me this one. And I remember our first meeting, like we were just talking about functionality. Immediately, I couldn't help it. I got on the mic on the meeting. I'm like, I have an idea. And that was kind of the start of it, to what you see there on the screen. So this is version 1 of the digital library. This is everything built out, all of the basic functionality that we were looking for coming through here. Laura, today you're going to be my hands in my search, or my Vanna White if you prefer. So we'll run through a couple searches. I'm excited to share some of the functionality with this. I want to emphasize this is an awesome starting point. This is all built out. I'm going to get technical for a second, so bear with me. This is all built out on WordPress, so there's lots of ways that you can go forward, adding plugins, functionality. So this is an awesome place to start with this as we continue adding different collections and things like that. So Laura, if you'll go ahead there and type into the search bar, let's just start with Mary Shellman. Let's go ahead and start there and then hit enter. Now that should limit all the searches there. Now you see on the far left side there is a group of collections. So depending on if you want to limit your search to, let's just say, the Carroll Yesteryears or the Carroll History Journal, you can click any one of those, and then at the bottom there's a little apply button at that list. Once you click those, it'll limit your search to only those collections. So you don't have to search through everything. If you know where it is, you can search it there. There's other options there too. Laura, if you want to click on the top right side, there should be a little symbol. It's got like boxes, and there's a box with some lines. If you want to click on that one. Oh, you're fine. All good. Yeah, so along with all this, we have different views, different filters, things you can use to narrow your search results to get to what you're looking to faster. We modeled this off of multiple different catalogs and library search functions to try to get the most that we could for using the plugins, everything that we had at hand. Yeah. Okay, let me see here. Oh, that's okay.
We're working off a mobile hotspot, not the Wi-Fi.
I promise it's faster than this. So in addition to all that different functionality, within there we have different views that you can use. There's a gallery view, there's a list view, that can give you different descriptions, different information within the documents. On the back end, we have a bunch of information loaded and other stuff to come too. So we have publication years loaded for different documents, so you can sort by year, limited to that. Author search functionality is coming. And we have a bulk of the documents too, things like the Union Bridge pilot, Carroll News uploaded. There's still some more Carroll News pending, I believe, but we've gone through roughly, I think it's over 4,000 documents uploaded at this point. So there's a significant amount there as well. You'll notice then as well on the top bar there, we have different resources for finding and search aids. We also have multiple digital exhibits. If you all remember the Mary Shellman exhibit from earlier this year, that digital exhibit is hosted live here, as well as the Carroll Farm exhibit. So, and then plans as well to expand to the Carroll 250 digital exhibit as well.
That's great.
I hope I didn't blow the lid on that one.
No, you're good.
There we go. Okay, yes, so here you can see multiple search results there. This will function similar to other archives that we looked at. One of the ones we used for inspiration was, ironically, Library of Congress when we were in the design process. So you have multiple search terms there. Typical things like using quotes around the searches will allow you to narrow your results, just to enrich that as well. And we have multiple filters. And again, this is a great starting point. Anything we can add on the back end can be used to help limit the searches and help get you what you're looking for faster. Now, Laura, if you can you click on donor credit at the top there, because I'm ready to say thank you to people. All right, so over the course of this progress, as Jason mentioned, we've had an awesome team to work with here with HSCC. Fantastic feedback from not only from Jason, Mimi, and Helena, but none of this would be possible without the generous donation made by Helena's father. And with that, I believe I'm turning it over.
Yep, here she comes.
Very nice to meet you in person today, Josh. Very nice. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see so many people here to welcome the digital library. History as it happens. Have you heard that phrase before? It's a definition of a newspaper, isn't it? Or perhaps you've heard first rough draft of history. My enthusiasm for newspapers, including the Union Bridge Pilot, is all about stepping back in time to see for myself what mattered to people in the past. The local events, the social and religious life, the opinion editorials, and of course, the lively advertisements. Could bread really have just cost a nickel or 3 cents? You won't be surprised to hear that my first search in the pilot was to find out something about my own family. Stories varied so widely. When did my grandfather move to Carroll County? He'd grown up in Harford County. The answer came up quickly through the search box functions and then sorting by date. I now know that Doc Zinkhan, as he was known, took out a 3-line ad. He didn't have a lot of money at the time. May 1916. And he announced his veterinary services would be available through Engler's Livery. He even had a phone number, 3 digits long. Within 2 years, of course, he wound up in France, World War I. I can't imagine it. You're a veterinarian and your job is to care for the horses who are pulling artillery through the mud and the muck, dying at a huge rate. But he got through it, and he sent dispatches back from the front to publish in, you all can tell me, the Union Bridge Pilot. I'm very grateful to the society members and my dad, who continued his subscription to the Pilot while I was growing up in Baltimore. I still remember it arriving every week, so he could keep in touch right to the end of this newspaper's run. But I'm very grateful to the society members, a lively group of you who have campaigned for a long while to create this digital library. You inspired a wonderful gift to genealogists, family historians, teachers, students, authors, artists, and more. And now, all of you can encourage people to seek out information and to appreciate the Historical Society, increase appreciation, because they'll also be able to explore the Carroll News. That goes all the way back to the 1880s, Mimi. The Pilot, and I understand many more records are going to come forth from the library. I liked your point, Josh. This is the starting point, the starting point. As a librarian, myself, it's especially meaningful for me to have been able to help support the launch and make your wonderful historical resources more widely available. My $30,000 gift in memory of my father and an anonymous gift to digitize the Carroll News are intended to open new opportunity in access to history. Please help this digital library grow. It's like a young tree, a sapling. You need a mighty oak. It's going to take care and nurturing. How can you build an online powerhouse to share the many stories of Carroll County and her people? Well, you can throw out some ideas for what to scan next. You can volunteer to demonstrate the system in local schools and colleges. Be ambassadors, tell your friends. Thank you. I'm going to hand back to Jason now to tell you more about the future opportunities, maybe internships, all kinds of imagination and ideas needed to make this digital library as strong as possible. There you go.
Thank you, Henry. Wonderful, wonderful. So you can check that out today when you go home. I believe on the Historical Society's website, the main site, there is a tab that can take you to the digital library. So well done, team. We're very proud of that accomplishment. And you know, Jim mentioned in his remarks about our capital campaign that one of the things that we've started to work on is the opening of the second floor of the Sherman Fisher Shellman House. Some of you remember, oh, not yet. Some of you remember Sarah Coster, who helped with the Mary Shellman Civil War to Suffrage exhibit. And she's going to give you just a teaser of what's to come in the second floor. And we've got about a 2-minute clip to share with you after Sarah's remarks. Sarah?
Thank you, Jason. And thank you, Helena. Your wonderful gift makes my job as an interpreter so much easier, as well as you said, genealogists, historians, teachers around the county, the state, and the country. So thank you to everyone who's donated to that project. I want to thank all of the members, the Historical Society, Jason, Laura, Stephanie, and the staff at HSAC. It's been my great pleasure to work with you all in the interpretation of the second floor of the Shellman House. As I'm sure everyone here knows, back in May, we completed the first phase of the project, Civil War to Suffrage. It was an intimate look at Mary Bostwick Shellman's life and legacy. Through her letters, objects, and photographs, we connected this remarkable local woman to the larger American story of service to others. That service has been on full display here this afternoon. Not only the wonderful awardees that we have been able to celebrate their accomplishments, but everyone that I've talked here today, whether they've served in the military, on the board of this organization, as a historian, genealogist, every single person I've talked to has emulated Mary Shellman's service, so thank you. I'm pleased to say that with the support of this community and that continued legacy of service, we will be able to reimagine the other rooms on the second floor. We will be able to explore stories of domestic work, family life, slavery, and how Carroll County was changing at the turn of the century. Each space will extend that same thoughtful, high-quality approach, linking the local history of this county with the bigger story. So I'm going to invite Laura to cue up the video to get a sneak peek at what will happen next.
Exists today. Every time someone pitches in or volunteers, they're carrying Mary's legacy forward. Currently, the rest of the upstairs of the Sherman Fisher Shellman House is used as collection storage. But we hope one day to be able to interpret the other interesting lives that passed through these spaces. One such woman is Mary Key, another Mary who lived in this house. Mary Key had a very different life than Mary Shellman. Born into slavery in 1812, she was freed before her 21st birthday. According to Paul Reese, she was born and died in the same room in this house. Even after being freed, she stayed with the family and worked as a mammy to her enslaver's son and grandson. Lizzie Tyson Tyson, born in 1855, was the Shumlin family's cook. Paul Reese, who grew up in the house, called her dictator, tyrant, and cook, and admitted he was a little scared of her. His favorite memory? Lizzie shouting, "Get out of my kitchen!" and him bolting for the door. Speaking of Paul Reese, he and his parents lived in one of these rooms. So did Mary's nephew when his parents died. We can only imagine all the different stories that these rooms can tell as we research further. Our Building Community Inspired by History capital campaign will make telling these important stories possible. We have raised more than half our campaign goal of $650,000. You can be part of this vision by visiting the Support Us page on the Historical Society's website, hsccmd.org.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm excited about what's to come. Thank you all very much. It is time now. We're going to hear from my friend Nick Powers from the Museum of the Shenandoah Valley. And Nick has a wonderful presentation planned for the group. He's going to be coming up here in just a moment. Nick, if you'd like to make your way to the podium. I think Laura is queuing up your presentation now. We got it there? Is this your presentation?
Not quite, not yet.
This isn't your presentation.
Not yet.
Does anyone in the room have a guess who this is? We knew two people would know who this was, but more so. This is Helen Gorman. Wonder why Helen Gorman is on the screen. Well, here, folks, if you'd like to come up, please join me here at the podium with Jim. Jim, part of his announcement was great, but it turns out we have more than half of our fundraising goal accomplished. We have Meg here that is about to make an amazing announcement for the Historical Society and the membership. Would you like to say a few words, Meg? No? I'm thrilled to announce that the Historical Society will be opening the Helen Gorman Library of Carroll County History at Cockeys in 2026 with a major gift. This gift is transformational in nature. And I know I can't be speechless. I'd love you to say just a few words about your mom and honoring her, please.
He told me I wouldn't have to make a speech. There's a lot of people here that worked with my mother in the library and that could probably tell you more about all of her expertise than what I could even tell you. I can tell you that all of her research about our family and Tawnytown and probably Carroll County too is now sitting in my living room in boxes all over the place. So I have all that to go through. But anybody that knows my mom knows that she was always elbow deep in research, and she was quite good at it, and without the use of a computer. She never had a computer in her house. She did it all by hand. And I'd come home from work and I'd stop in to see how she was doing, and she'd say, "I didn't get anything done around here today because so-and-so called and they wanted to know about this or that." And she had all these books around her, and she was, you could tell, she was in her element. That's what she loved. And she loved helping people in the library, and she was involved with the Historical Society for most of her adult life, I think. So I felt like this was an honor that she really, really deserved.
You know, it's so wonderful when you have a tie to the past, like Helen Gorman, a dedicated person and now being remembered and honored for an area that she enjoyed so much, the library of the Historical Society. And we really thank Meg for stepping up to recognize her mom and to also make our library one step closer to being finalized. Thank you so much.
So we anticipate a May 2026 ribbon cutting event for the new library. Nick, I have another false alarm. I'm sorry. I think what we want to do, Laura, how many minute break? Maybe just a few minutes for stretching. There's some dessert on the table. Grab it, some dessert, and then I promise, Nick, I'll introduce you in just a few minutes. We won't take a long break because we know the afternoon is getting short. So please grab some dessert and take a stretch break, and we'll be back with you here in maybe 5-10 minutes. Thank you. Native of the Shenandoah Valley, Powers graduated from James Madison University in 2011 with a degree in history. In 2014, he graduated from the Winter Program in American Material Culture at the University of Delaware. Powers researches for exhibits. He lectures on museum collections of the Valley and fine, decorative, and folk arts. He's self-taught. And he's particularly interested in the collection, American collection at the museum, European and Asian art assembled by the museum benefactor Julian Wood Glass Jr. Powers is author of multiple articles on Shenandoah Valley and Southern decorative arts, material culture, and history. Can we have a warm round of applause for Nick? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I have a lot to live up to. You all are very, very active. It's great to hear all the things that you are doing here in Carroll County. Thank you for inviting me here today. I'm very happy to introduce you to one of my favorite subjects in American art history. Is that better? Thank you. To introduce you to the life and the work of German-American artist Friedrich Kemmelmeyer. I've been researching Kemmelmeyer for the better part of 15 years now. And as we crawl closer and closer to the semi-quincentennial in 2026, I can very soundly say that Kemmelmeyer's story, he's very perfect, and it's a very interesting one to look into the study of the early American experience. As we'll explore, Kemmelmeyer came to America as a German soldier. He's coming here in the service of the British monarchy, but he became one of the approximately 3,000 or so German auxiliaries. You will probably commonly refer to them as Hessians. We'll talk about that in a minute. But he chose to remain here following the war. But more importantly, unlike a lot of early Americans, he left behind a material record, not just in documents, but also in the paintings that he left behind that allow us to track his transformation as a cultural German coming from Europe to a visually literate German-American citizen. And I should say, kind of from the outset, I'm just the latest person to study Kemmelmeyer and his work. I'm certainly not the first. Paintings like this one that you see here of George Washington, this one he tended to sign, whereas many others he did not. But these have been known since about the 1950s. And in 1984, Briding Adams really published the first major article on Kemmelmeyer that was really looking at him across the wide span of his work. And I'm very grateful that a number of years later, Briding entrusted all of her research papers about Kemmelmeyer, as well as other artists who were working as his contemporaries, to me to try and continue and further push that research. I first encountered him while as a graduate student with the Museum of Early Southern Decorative Arts, which often gets shortened to MESDA Summer Institute, where you undertake a research project on a particular object. And I was attracted to this kind of, in some ways, bizarre image of the Jewish Sanhedrin Council sentencing Jesus Christ before his trial with Pontius Pilate. This was probably painted for a Lutheran congregation in Baltimore, and it hints a little bit at the breadth of his work that we're going to look at. Religious paintings, genre paintings, which in his period were referred to largely as history paintings, as well as portraiture taken from life, and we'll see a connection to Carroll County a little bit later. But as I mentioned, he comes from a very different background and under very different circumstances before he takes up painting. We know from church records that he was born in 1752 in Stuttgart, which is the capital of what is today the state of Baden-Württemberg in southwest Germany. And this is not quite the Rhineland-Palatinate area that you're probably more familiar with of the many Germans who are coming here into colonial America, but this is kind of still on that borderland between Switzerland, France, so he had many connections, or at least was culturally able to connect with people once he ends up here in America. And we know very little about his early life in America, or until he comes to America as a member of those German-American units that are attached to the British Army during the Revolution. And I should say, you've probably heard these people referred to as Hessians. But while it's used in the period, that's not exactly correct. If we look back, only about 65% or so of the German soldiers who come to America come from the two states of Hesse-Kassel and Hesse-Hanau, where the name Hessian comes from. The majority, the other half of that majority, are largely conscripts from smaller German states. Not all of these men were professional soldiers. Many were conscripts who were deemed expendable by society. So people like school dropouts, bankrupts, servants without master, and the unemployed. All of these people made up part of the Hessian ranks alongside those who were actually professional soldiers. And military records tell us that Kemmelmeyer was a Feldscher, which translated from German is roughly kind of a combat medic or surgeon. And to me, that suggests that he had a certain familiarity with anatomy, which I think might have been very useful later on in his life when he was painting portraits and trying to render figures in his painting. And he may have been at the Battle of Trenton, we don't quite know, but by 1782, he was garrisoned with British troops in Charleston, South Carolina. So we all know our American Revolutionary history. After the Battle of Yorktown, the British slowly start to pull out of the American colonies, and the British forces begin evacuating Charleston, first for New York, and then with the intention to cross back over to Europe. And rather than leaving with the army, Kemmelmeyer instead deserts. We actually have the record in his regiment, and he's probably hidden by members of this church, St. John's Lutheran in Charleston. And a year later in 1783, he further integrates himself with this congregation by marrying into one of its congregants, a widow by the name of Mary Gruber. And unfortunately for him, it is kind of a marriage that is doomed to fail. It didn't last very long, didn't even last the year. And part of why I think that maybe didn't work so well was the fact that she was the widow of an American Revolutionary soldier who died at the Siege of Savannah in 1779. So where Kemmelmeyer probably was on the other side of the lines fighting against the Americans. So this was not the beginnings of marital bliss, to say the least. And in the same year that they married, they undertook a very, very public divorce that takes place, that you can track it in the Charleston newspapers, starting in July 1783, where we see this article where the couple quotes, agrees to forever separate as man and wife, and for that purpose have entered into articles of separation. So always we should be careful what we read in newspapers. Later it is mentioned that this might have been the result of an extramarital affair on Mary's part. And one of the kind of singular sentences that I've ever seen in an American newspaper, about a year later, a man named George Warner, who was a carpenter in Charleston, claimed in a newspaper advertisement that, quote, "I never to my knowledge, directly or indirectly, said anything prejudicial whatsoever to the character of Mary Kemmelmeyer, and I never had any carnal communication with her." I'm not going to go into the details. I'm going to let you imagine what carnal communication means for yourself. So very understandably, Kemmelmeyer probably wants to get out of Charleston. So he disappears from the records for about 5 years. And despite 15 years of research and others who have preceded me, I cannot track him until he reappears in June 1788 in Baltimore, which obviously is, I'm sure all of you know, by that point was emerging as one of the largest and most significant port towns in early America. And in this same year, he takes his first major step into becoming an American citizen. He takes the oath of naturalization here in Maryland, and he remains in the Baltimore area as a painter, advertising as such through the end of the century. Though it's possible that he was making painting trips further out west through this area as well into my area in the Shenandoah Valley prior to 1800, but at least from what we have today, his pre-1800 work largely is defined, like I said, by those religious scenes, history paintings, like those we've talked about already. But from advertisements, we also know he was painting other forms that really haven't survived. Sign painting seems to be one of his kind of day-to-day activities, but also painting portraits from life in some of the larger oils and pastels that we'll see a little bit later, but also in miniatures, which are usually somewhere about that big, in watercolor on ivory. None of those have survived that I've ever seen that are signed. There are a couple that I've wondered could be his work, but we don't know. But for his history and his genre paintings, essentially everything other than what he painted from life, he was nearly always using a print source as his basis. And a really good example of that is this near to life-size portrait that's in Washington, D.C. of Martin Luther. And it is based on this English copy of a Dutch print. And paintings like the Bloody Sentence that we saw earlier and this painting were probably used and intended for either Lutheran or another Central European congregation used in their church. This is one that we can find kind of traces of how it might have been used in other contexts. I was really fortunate that a colleague first made me aware of this image of the Lutheran Church in York County, Pennsylvania, right around 1800. And if you look into that little section that I've kind of pulled out there, Miller depicts a very, very similar portrait of Martin Luther on that back wall, complete with the white goose. You might be wondering, why is there a goose with Martin Luther? This is actually an allegorical reference to a man named Jan Hus, who was a Bohemian martyr during the early Protestant Reformation, whose last name translated to goose. That's why he appears as a goose. And he was very influential with Martin. And also, if we zoom in further, along that upper gallery, we can see other paintings of the 12 apostles and other very prominent parables from the Bible. And while they're not known to survive from Kellermeyer's work, it wouldn't surprise me at all if similar examples like these that you see along that balcony would show up sometime in the future. But he doesn't always stay in Baltimore. By the summer of 1803, he'd relocated to Alexandria. And a little later that year, he moves right across the Potomac River to Georgetown. And sometime between his arrival to Baltimore and then this series of moves, he begins painting scenes of George Washington. And I think to a certain extent, his move to the DC area may have been specifically to capitalize on demands for portraits of George Washington after his death in 1799. And again, he's relying on engraved print sources of Washington that are published by both American and largely English, but other European printers. And it's also at this point, along with his naturalization, that we begin to see his changing identity from a German emigre into an American citizen. This painting is one of the earliest attributable to Kellermeyer. It's not signed, but it depicts King Frederick the Great of Prussia, who was reviewing troops near his palace at Sanssouci, near Potsdam, which is a little bit southwest of current-day Berlin. And Kellermeyer, being from Stuttgart, he was never a subject in the monarchical sense for Frederick, but Frederick was one of the most prominent German military leaders in the 18th century, and so his image shows up in all kinds of media. And this portrait, while it's not exactly signed, I think we have a little bit hint of that. In that little pullout, if you look on the rear end of the saddle, there is the initials FK that are painted, which are not in the original print source. And I suspect that's kind of a double entendre, both for Frederick Kellmeyer's initials, but also for Friedrich König, which in German means King Frederick. So he's playing a little bit here. But again, we have him using a print source, the original engraving of this scene after an artist from Poland, Daniel Nicholas Chodowiecki, who was in Frederick the Great's court. So as Kellmeyer settles into his life as a naturalized citizen, he subtly begins kind of shifting and signaling his change from being a European to an American by changing those images, adapting them into kind of new American ones, like the one we saw earlier of George Washington in 1794, who is depicted reviewing troops after raising them from Maryland, Virginia, and Western Pennsylvania to put down the Whiskey Rebellion that happened in that year. And he painted this scene multiple times in a few different variations throughout his career. The one on the bottom you've already seen. The one on the upper left is very similar to that one, but look closely at the bridle of the horse. There's some differences in detail. And on the top right is a painting that's in the Metz collection that is kind of his expanded view of that. You know, these are all signed, but none of them are dated, which makes it very difficult to tell how many times he went back to this subject over his many decades of painting. But from about 1805 until his death in 1821, he also begins undertaking a pattern of kind of itinerancy that takes him throughout Western Maryland, Southern Pennsylvania, and into my home region of the Shenandoah Valley. He's painting portraits of men, women, and children, almost all of which are executed in pastel on paper. And he moves pretty frequently, literally moving to pursue commissions, but through his dated portraits, newspaper articles, and some other records, we can begin to kind of reconstruct his path, though there are some spaces in between that we don't know. So we've already talked about him moving into Alexandria and then into Georgetown, but by June of 1805, he had relocated from Georgetown to Frederick, Maryland, and by the fall of that same year, he had moved to Hagerstown, and he used Hagerstown quite a bit as kind of a base of operations for traveling. But over a year later, he also makes a really quick foray up into the Chambersburg, Pennsylvania area. He's back in Hagerstown by 1807, and he stays there for a few years as he continues to radiate outward and find more commissions. He also, in 1811, stops in Libertytown, a little bit to our west, which is really useful for us because within the space of about a month, he paints these three portraits. And like many artists of his era, he is relying on kinship networks between families to get more commissions. And so, for example, the young man who's painted as a 6-year-old, James McSherry Cole on the left, he eventually marries the daughter of Dr. Francis Sappington, who's pictured in the middle here. So two of these three sitters become related by marriage. And together, these three paintings, they present a really good opportunity to define what to look for in identifying a Kellmeyer portrait. So first of all, as we've kind of already seen, they're more likely to be a pastel, though there are some oil paintings that do survive, but they're a much smaller proportion. And most of his portraits, they are, I hate to say this, like they're a little chubby, they're a little overemphasized to a certain extent with these large eyes that have kind of large pupils with fleshy and kind of ruddy complexions. Not all of his portraits are all that attractive, and I can say that after I love him, but sometimes, ooh. He was not afraid to depict people, I think, as he actually thought they were. And a good example of that are his portraits of George Washington. If you look closely at his cheeks, thank you. If you look closely at his cheeks, he has the smallpox scars that Washington received when he was a 19-year-old traveling with his brother in the Caribbean. So I don't know if he ever saw Washington in person, but he knew enough to try to capture some of those physical features. His backgrounds tend to have some sort of combination of kind of peach, bluish, tan tones, especially in his pastels. actually, one of his most accomplished portraits, in my opinion, actually has a really nice connection here to Carroll County. And this pastel on paper that's mounted later onto canvas depicts Evan Lloyd Crawford, and it's in the collection of the Maryland Center for History and Culture, obviously what used to be the Maryland Historical Society. It's not dated, but he's wearing the War of 1812 uniform of a non-commissioned officer, which is distinguished by that silver single epaulette. So we can date it to probably somewhere around 1815. I think it's more likely to have been painted in Frederick County than in here. But as a former soldier, Kemmelmeyer tends to very much focus on those small details of uniform. So we've already talked a little bit about that silver epaulette, but also if you look closely at the silver breastplate on his chest, it's engraved ELC for Crawford's initials. And you can also see in that right-hand image, unfortunately at some point this portrait was exposed to either moisture or water damage, so that color differentiation is actually from that. Crawford was born in Frederick County. He worked there as a brick maker. He married Isabel Smith, who was a first-generation immigrant from Inverness in Scotland. They married in 1811 in Baltimore. And it's not exactly clear when, but sometime after the War of 1812, maybe as early as 1814, the Crawfords become residents of New Windsor here in Carroll County. And it seems likely that from the records, the Crawfords are moving to multiple places, and sometimes they're in Baltimore, sometimes they're in other places in Carroll County, but by the 1850 census, the family is living in New Windsor, where he dies and is buried in 1861. And you can see this image, he has given up the trade of brickmaker by the 1850 census to become a farmer, though he may have been making bricks still. This is actually one of the pastels in the portraits that I know the least about. So if anyone in the audience has more information about the Crawford family or resources to look, I would love to talk with you more. But by 1813, he's living in my part of the world, in the Shenandoah Valley, basing largely out of Winchester. And we are incredibly lucky to have a surviving letter that offers us some insight into his life that survives at Duke University in the papers of the Hinkle family. The Hinkles were very prominent physicians, printers, as well as ministers. They kept every single document they ever wrote or printed. We actually have their printing press in our collection at the MSV. But in this letter from John Hinkle in Charlestown, what's now Jefferson County in the eastern panhandle of West Virginia, he's writing to his cousin, Dr. Solomon Hinkle of Newmarket, talking about Kemmelmeyer showing up to Charleston. And he writes, "Old F. Kemmelmeyer has come to Charlestown and has started at drawing, and will get a vast amount of business if he could do it to perfection. But he is getting too old, he can't imitate 1 in 10. The old man drinks harder, which makes much against him in drawing." So not a great endorsement. And immediately we're tempted to assume that Kemmelmeyer was an alcoholic, which certainly was a huge problem in the 19th century. But I'd also like to offer a slight alternative that maybe have been at play. Kemmelmeyer's painting technique was rooted in the craft traditions of the 18th century and the early 19th century. And unfortunately, that means that he was exposed to a lot of heavy metals, not Metallica, but actually like actual materials like lead that appears in some of his paints, and he's also exposed to other caustic materials. So for example, some oil paints that were used in this period were mixed often by the artists themselves with dry pigments and a binder like a linseed oil. So the white lead or or sometimes red lead, to create his pigments, he's actually grinding that down, kind of aerosoling it and inhaling it, and then using it to apply his paints. So he's getting it in two different ways. And also, as we talked about, he's painting quite a bit in pastel, which in that period are basically miniature crayons. And you could buy these crayons that were imported from Europe from larger merchant firms like in places like Baltimore, but in many cases these artists were also pressing the crayons themselves, and when you do that it also releases dust that you can inhale. So I think when we're talking about him drinking by 1813, I think we need to at least consider the idea that maybe he was drinking to try and dull neurological pain that was happening from multiple decades worth of using materials that were not great for you. Actually, just last week gave a talk at the MSV on the things that might kill us in our collection, the things that we handle very carefully. Kemmelmeyer died in 1821 while living in Shepherdstown, what is now Jefferson County, West Virginia. This is his advertisement. Actually, it has shifted a little bit. This is his obituary, but it did get shifted a little bit, so I'll instead move to his last portrait that was painted in 1816 in Shepherdstown. This is Katharina Weltzheimer, who ran a tavern but also had her own home in Shepherdstown. Actually, her cabin is now owned and used by Shepherd University, and the tavern is now university housing for students. So those two buildings survive. And he probably painted this portrait, at least in part, as payment for room and board. He rarely seems to have stayed in one place or have had his own home, at least that I can document. And in the 15 years that I've been hunting for Kemmelmeyer, I've been continually surprised about what appears and what doesn't, what's still missing. So for example, he also very frequently advertised Masonic emblems, but for years and years and years, I could never find one. And the moniker that if you can't find something, you should look under your own nose is a really good one in this case. In 2013, members of Winchester's Masonic Lodge found 4 oil on canvas tracing boards, Masonic tools that were used to teach about the symbols, signs of secret Masonic rites. They found 4 of these examples that were stored and had been relegated to a 19th century stable building that had been repurposed for basically storage in the 20th century. So the first 3 were found within a year, and then a 4th was found about a year later. There originally may have been as many as 7 or 8, but we, many years ago, acquired these paintings to try to preserve them. So I'm showing you a couple of in-progress images of what they might look like. These were used in the Royal Arch degree of Freemasonry, which has a lot of symbolism that's taken from the book of Exodus. And each one of them is really fortunately signed and labeled on the reverse with Kemmelmeyer's name, the identifier of Baltimore. So he may have been painting them in Baltimore and shipping them to the Shenandoah Valley. And you can see the label here. And he painted these in 1799, but he marks it as 1599. And I haven't quite figured that out yet. The Masonic calendar is different than the Julian calendar that we use, but I don't think Kemmelmeyer was a Mason, so I think he was trying to give that mystique of the Masonic calendar without actually knowing how that worked. The commission was probably thanks to Philip Klipstein, an officer who was in the Winchester Lodge, who also served as a surgeon's mate, as a German troop during the American Revolution. And those two families later became even more interconnected when Klipstein's son married Kemmelmeyer's daughter, possibly because they were having a child out of wedlock. I mean, Kemmelmeyer's story reads like a soap opera from beginning to end. But we are incredibly lucky to now have these paintings in the museum's collection. I brought the last painting in the series for you to see in person today, which depicts the Ark of the Covenant. And I promise if you get close to this one, it won't burn your eyes out like the one in Indiana Jones. But we are in the process of conserving these paintings for exhibition next year, opening on July 4th, an exhibition that we're calling Revolutionary Valley, that looks at both the Revolutionary period, but also how Americans have tried to fulfill the promise of our founding documents for themselves, looking at the Shenandoah Valley as a place of revolutionary thought and culture from the beginning up to today. I hope that you have had an opportunity to at least get a little bit of a glimpse of Kemmelmeyer's life and work. The other paintings will be finished hopefully by the end of this year, where I'll be able to pick them up. We will then work on reframing them because they need, we do have the surviving frames, but some of them only survive in pieces. And trying to make 4 frames look identical when all of them have had different levels of damage is very difficult. So we're looking to have new frames made exact copies from the originals. So hopefully the next time that you see these paintings, they will be in Revolutionary Valley in July of next year. And I hope my presentation today has whetted your appetite to come see them in person. So thank you for having me today. I also wanted to mention that many years ago, when I was still an undergraduate student, I wrote an article on Kemmel Meyer that if you're interested in learning more, I replaced President Washington's head with a QR code that you are welcome to follow to learn more. But I'm also happy to take any questions, and thank you very much for having me today.
We have time for maybe 1-2 questions.
Sure.
If anyone has one.
Any questions?
Nick, you'll be around?
Yeah.
Also
Yeah, I will be here.
Folks can come up and see the painting.
Please do. Yeah, if you haven't already seen the painting, please do make sure to come see it.
And Bill and Diana Brown, we wanted to thank you for the lunch sponsorship today. Thank you very much. And some of us are still reeling from the shock of the library announcement. Can we have another warm round of applause for Meg and Ed and the family in honor of Helen? Thank you very much. With that, we hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you for coming.